Welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. I'm Brennan, and I'm hosting today. Colin is out, which is a shame. He's missing out on a great discussion we're about to have on Adam Sandler's newest, Hubie Halloween. However, I am joined by Nick, as always. How's it going?
Colin is a coward, leaving us dry for what is possibly the most important episode on this podcast to ever happen, ever. We have Hubie Halloween. It's a big day for us.
It is a very big day. We've been waiting for this thing for a while, and it's here, finally, and it seems like it's here to stay. Number one this weekend on the Netflix charts, and I can't wait for a couple weeks from now, whenever they drop their statistics, that this thing is now the new most watched Netflix movie. But before we get into that, let's open up with some box office news, as well as just some updates on some upcoming films. So firstly, we're going to talk about Soul, the new Pixar film, which is definitely highly anticipated. Onward had some hype, but Soul was always going to be the one that was going to bring the goods for Pixar this year. So officially now, Soul has been moved to Disney Plus. This will be on December the 25th, a Christmas Day release. Initially, it was supposed to hit theaters in November. Then they talked about some sort of hybrid. But now it is officially going to be premiering on Disney Plus on the 25th. I can't say I didn't see this coming. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know if they're going to do it like Mulan. I would have to look into that. But I'll throw it over to you, and I just want to hear some of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, we had been hearing rumors, and a lot of the trades have been reporting this for a couple weeks too. This was probably going to happen, and Disney was looking at just the landscape, and obviously No Time to Die and all these other big blockbusters shifting and more theaters closing for the time being because they figure that they'll lose less money actually being closed than being open, which that's just pure economics, which is just that's just a tough situation for everybody involved. But yeah, I feel like this is a smart move, all things considered. And yeah, to follow up on your point, it is just dropping on Disney Plus, so there's no over-the-top price like Mulan or anything like that. So on Christmas Day, Soul is going to be available on Disney Plus, and however many Disney Plus subscribers there are, I think it's over like 60 million at this point. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a pretty smart move because I think it's clearly throughout the pandemic we've learned that there is just not enough diversification in how to release movies, and we haven't quite cracked the system and how to do that if theaters aren't great. And we've seen so many movies lose money, like Mulan, which reportedly has lost a lot of money, or just movies just getting pushed back and back and back until even next year, or even off the slate entirely because studios just don't know how to release them and make money. But the one genre that we've seen that has done pretty decently through all of this is the kids' movies. And every week we have on Netflix, it's like The Secret Life of Pets 2 or The Lorax or any Illumination movie or just any kind of animation movie. They always do really well in there. And there's like 4 or 5 that are playing there. And Trolls World Tour, the biggest movie of 2020, apparently. That movie did really well when that came out on premium VOD. So I think, all things considered, probably Soul was supposed to be a big time movie for Pixar and Disney. It was probably going to make a lot of money. Pixar movies always do pretty well unless you're like a Cars movie or something like that. But I think all things considered, I think this is a decent move because I'm certainly going to watch it. Soul was a movie that I had tapped to be the next Pixar movie to just ruin me and make me bawl my eyes out after things like Inside Out and Coco. And it feels like every few years they have one of these movies that's just basically an adult movie that has really cool animation that kids can also watch. And this felt like the next one of those. But yeah, I think obviously not in a perfect world here, but this does make some sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was excited to see this in the theaters. And I have seen here now that some countries that still don't have Disney Plus launched, this will be hitting theaters in those countries. I don't know where that is, but we'll see that occur. Yeah, it's an interesting move for sure. It's probably the smarter move. I know some people are a little upset that this isn't getting a theatrical release, or that they're not delaying it like they are with, say, Black Widow. But it is business, and The Croods, however, has moved up from December 23 to November 25 to get a little bit of freedom from Seoul. So that's something to look out for. I know that's your most anticipated.
Yeah, I love The Croods. Big Croods head over here. That's an interesting one though, because I feel like every week we do see The Croods show up on Netflix too. So maybe that's the next premium VOD animated possibility, because I don't know, like theaters might not be open on Thanksgiving for the way things are going, and just more and more companies are closing their doors for the time being with all these movies coming out. Because it looks like right now Free Guy is supplanted itself kind of as the next big-ish movie to come out. I mean, we have things on Netflix, and the trailer for Mank dropped this week, which I'm really, really excited for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Free Guy seems like the next one. So maybe, I think The Croods, probably. I think they're going to see what happens the next few weeks, as are all studios. But I think that might be a premium VOD option.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, this Soul stuff's interesting. I think that it's going to absolutely destroy on that weekend, the week of Christmas there when it drops on Disney Plus. It's going to be doing some major numbers, especially because it doesn't have that $30 price tag. However, I do hope this isn't something that leads Pixar to say, go back to their formula of constant sequels. I hope that they're not upset. I mean, who knows? I think they this type of year where profits have been down, they might have to start relying on going back to the sequels. I know that they were trying to pull away from that. This was a big year with 2 original films from Pixar. But I'm sure that we could be seeing in the coming years Pixar returning to a lot of sequels.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. And it's one of those tough things where if I'm a studio head, I don't think it's a good idea to take many trends, if any at all, from the coronavirus in terms of what we do with blockbusters. Maybe for the more middling movies that are like the smaller budgets and things like that, maybe you learn stuff about those. But yeah, I would hope that Pixar would continue to do all this creative stuff, because I feel like with Disney, ever since Apple sold Pixar to Disney, they've just kind of been like, all right, go do your thing, Pixar, and we'll release your movies. But yeah, it seems like with just profits kind of fading away across the board for all these studios, I think that is a possibility where you could see maybe like Toy Story 5 or like Incredibles 3 or Cars 4. I don't know, but it's definitely a possibility. It seems like I wouldn't put it past any of the studios to say like, hey, we need a quick buck, so let's return to the well one more time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's what we're probably going to see. So we'll move a little bit away from there and actually talk about what has been going on at the actual box office, and obviously not too much, but Tenet has been knocked out of the top spot. I didn't see that coming, but Robert De Niro's The War with Grandpa, he's the lead in that film. He is the grandpa they're having a war with. That film has landed the top spot this weekend at the box office with $3.6 million out of 2,250 theaters. This is a movie that I think is going to have its little run at the box office, then go to streaming or VOD and probably do all right just because of it's Robert De Niro. It's more of a family movie. But Tenet has been knocked out. However, we talked about this before we got on. Tenet has now touched around 325 million worldwide, slowly chugging along. But yeah, so The War with Grandpa has unseated Tenet.
It is interesting with The War with Grandpa, because we've been in the zone. I mean, you have The Irishman in here and a few others, but De Niro has squarely been in this mode now where he's been making a ton of just questionable decisions as an actor, and he's been in all these. Right, he's been in, what was that, Grudge Match, that Stallone De Niro movie where they're both like 80 years old fighting each other. It's like, what the hell is this? And so many others. And I feel like weirdly, like, and you watch the trailer for this and you're like, what the hell is this movie? I'm certainly not looking forward to seeing this anytime soon. But you would think that if this was on like a Netflix or Hulu or any of these streaming services, I feel like we would have talked more about how De Niro is just going after cash grabs left and right. But I feel like weirdly, this movie is hidden from a lot of the discourse because it's in theaters, which is such a weird thing to say, you know? But Yeah, I feel like people just aren't paying as much attention to it just because they can't readily watch it, and no one wants to go to theaters now. But yeah, I think it beating Tenet is really funny to me. That's just like a fun thing that you can say out of context for years to come and say, "Hey, The War with Grandpa beat Tenet at the box office." Um, but yeah, I think it's The War with Grandpa. It's a family movie, and I don't know. I wouldn't take my kids to go to the movies right now, but it is one of those where one ticket essentially turns into two. So even where theaters are closing left and right, you still have the possibility of a improved box office return, even though 3.6 probably isn't exactly what 101 Studios probably wanted for this movie. But yeah, it's really strange. Tenet is doing okay, as we've talked about many times, but it's really really funny to see this number.
Yeah, and as we talked about, the drop-offs are still pretty good for a lot of these films. Like New Mutants, 34% from last weekend, Unhinged, 22%, Tenet, 22%. These are pretty low drop-offs, but it's a tough time, right? And theaters are closing. I think Seoul probably, I mean, last week we heard about the news of some of the big theater chains that are now set to close until April. And I think Seoul probably, Disney probably saw that and was like, yeah, that's kind of the final nail in the coffin here with our plans for this release. Let's move to Disney Plus. So it sucks. The box office still looks pretty sad, but I think I'm officially used to these numbers. Like I remember the first couple weeks when things started coming back. Tenet was out, made its 20 million or whatever. I was looking at these numbers. I was pretty shocked, but now I'm looking at these numbers and I'm kind of used to them now.
It is weird because I feel like with so many different things throughout this pandemic, I feel like it's gone on for so long that we have started to just rationalize a lot of things or just like it's the new normal now. So like, oh, everyone's in masks. That's just how it is. Or when you go out to eat outside and everyone is keeping their distance and we're at this point now where it's been so long where we're like, yeah, that's just how it is now, which kind of is terrifying to me when you really think about it. But I'm the same way too, where we had so many months where it was just like, hey, nothing's happening. What do you guys want to talk about this week? So now that we have like some news, it's interesting, but yeah, you still have like nothing really, really going on. It's pretty sad. I feel bad for a lot of these movies. I know there's some movies where they came into theaters and probably made a little more than they probably would have. Something
Hmm.
like Infidel or maybe even Possessor, because that's like an NC-17 movie. I don't really know what that would have done in regular times, but for the most part, yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, even point to Unhinged. I mean, that movie's up at 37 million now worldwide. I think that's probably on par with what it would do regularly.
Yeah, and that's especially for Solstice Studios. That was the first movie they were releasing. They're like, "Hey, we are a new distributor. Here we come." And then boom, pandemic, which is just like probably the worst timing in distributor history for something like that. But yeah, they're keeping afloat with that. You really can't. Yeah, everything, all things considered, Unhinged is doing pretty decently. And I'm sure, like everything else, the VOD tail will be a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, you got Russell Crowe there. He's a name that will probably get some middle-aged men to just kind of rent it at home. But the fact that this movie's done better domestically than it has overseas, like it's a little over 19.3 domestically, versus 18 overseas, that's pretty good. I think that's pretty impressive, especially when you look at a movie like Tenet, which 15% of its gross has been domestic. You'll never see something like that again.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's very, these are trying times as every news outlet would say.
Indeed. So we'll move on now to the Netflix top 10 and what everyone has been waiting for. I'm going to go from 10 to 1 so we can finish off with the best at number 1, obviously.
Oh, please do.
So, as you mentioned, a lot of animated movies obviously kicking. Secret Life of Pets 2 at number 10. The Croods at number 9. They're drumming up some interest for that upcoming film. Super Monsters, Dia de los Monsters at number 8. The Outpost at number 7. Shout out to The Outpost. That's a good movie. I rented it on VOD in June, I think, or July. That was a good film. Big Daddy at 6, so Adam Sandler's kind of spreading his wealth out here. Enola Holmes holds strong at number 5. Colombiana at 4. American Pie presents Girls is Rules. I've never heard of this. Is this a new movie?
I don't know. Who knows?
I did not hear about that American Pie movie. American Murder: The Family Next Door holds over at number 2 this weekend. And at number 1, Hubie Halloween. We are going to discuss this thing. Too bad Colin's not here, but next week we're going to put him on the spot. He's going to have to talk about this movie.
Even if he hasn't seen it, we're going to have the really awkward conversation where he has to tell the world that he hasn't seen it yet. So, Colin, I know you're listening right now because you love listening to stuff even when you're not on the pod, but you need to watch Hubie Halloween. It's the most important movie ever since Uncut Gems. We have to talk about it again.
I mean, real quick, I mean, we can spin this thing and make this sound really good. Like, you got Ray Liotta coming back and he's acting again. You got Steve Buscemi. He's in here as some werewolf-looking thing. I mean, you got Adam Sandler playing some off-personality type character. I mean, this is quite a movie.
It certainly is a movie. And even jokes aside, because I know it's like, I feel like ever since Uncut Gems came out, we were all waiting for the next Sandler movie. And the memes were Fast and Furious when the trailer was released for this movie. I actually enjoyed this movie. Maybe I'd even recommend it, and this isn't even me going for the memes or being ironic. Like I kind of liked myself. I kind of enjoyed it. I had a good time. I found a lot of entertainment in this. I don't know. What did you think?
I liked the first little bit. I think as it went on, I just got more tired with it. But I'll be honest, the first like 25 minutes or so, I laughed a couple times for sure. And then maybe it wore off on me. But I like how with a lot of the cast, like he's got a lot of his classic guys in here, but he didn't unveil them right at the beginning. Like kind of as the movie went on, more guys started popping in, and it kind of made for a fun time.
It's weird, but it's funny to say maybe this is like the lowest bar you can say for this kind of thing, but it actually functions as a movie, which you can't say for a lot of Sandler movies. It's like you take out all of the movies that he's done with your PTAs and your Safdie brothers and your Apatows and just these Happy Madison productions. Like none of them, like the big issue that I feel like I've talked about, I feel everyone's talked about, is they look so lazy and they're all just movies with his friends where they get to go on vacation and they're in Hawaii or they're in wherever Murder Mystery was. That was, I forget where that was filmed, but it was basically just Sandler taking a European vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And you have all of, like, there's so many different examples of this. And I know I've talked about in times past where, as I now have a job in real life, where you kind of see like studios dropping the bag for Sandler to be able to make these movies, where I'm like, cool, go ahead. If someone's gonna pay you that amount of money to do that, by all means, have fun. Like I would probably do the exact same thing. But this movie, it feels like a movie. It has a script. The production design looks really good. Like this movie loves Halloween really much. Mm-hmm. Like there's so much Halloween paraphernalia, great costumes, just lighting. It looks like there's depth of field sometimes. Like it functions like a comedy movie, which is so much better than you can look for. And yeah, there's some fun little gags in here. I don't know what Adam Sandler is doing in this movie. Like I had to put the subtitles on because I couldn't understand what he was saying. And honestly, it does feel like a Galaxy Brain performance from him, where it's like, I'm going to do something so weird that you can't turn away and you won't be able to figure out whether you like it or not. Kind of like what Tom Hardy did with Capone, where you're like, I don't even know what's happening here, but it's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good strategy.
It really is. And there's a couple of good gags in here where there's a vomit gag at the beginning of this movie that is so unexpected, and it made me laugh really, really hard. And it's so stupid.
Yeah.
It is ungodly stupid, and it was so unexpected that I couldn't help but laugh. There's a few things with his thermos that I thought were really funny. Like
I like that. I like that part.
I thought it was just like a super gadget where he uses his soup thermos for everything. It's like a grappling hook and like a blow dryer and all these crazy things, and it's so unrealistic, but it's really funny, and they play with that. There's the other one where he's riding on his bike and people just throw more and more aggressive things at him, and he's really good at ducking them because he's so used to getting things thrown at him, or like I think at one point someone throws a TV monitor or a computer monitor at him. It's so bizarre and so funny. But yeah, I think the best version of these Happy Madison movies are kind of what this is, where it's clearly a movie with all his friends again, but they are having a really fun time, and it's weirdly infectious. And this, like, there actually is some kind of script going on here, and it's not just laziness. I think that's the big thing here. There doesn't feel like there's a lot of laziness in this movie. Maybe it's not. You're not going to get really any big themes from this, although there is I guess the mayor of the town kind of doing the Jaws thing where he's like, no, we have to keep the town open on Halloween for tourism.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's just it didn't strike me as a lazy thing, and I feel like with all the things 2020 is thrown our way, like there are many worse things to watch than Adam Sandler just being weird for like 100 minutes.
Yeah. You know, like it was a fun time. However, it struck me like there were moments in the movie where he's just kind of rolling around on the ground, or remember when he was trying to not dig up the grave, but he was trying to get some dirt away so he could read some hidden letter. Like he's just kind of rolling on the ground. I'm like, this guy's a little too old to be rolling around on the ground.
There is a thing where I think every Sandler movie of this type is like the overarching idea is like be nice to everybody or whatever, and it's like an older guy stuck in some term like kind of adolescence where like he's a mama's boy in this movie, which pays off later on, which is very weird. Can't say I'm on board for that part of the movie, and I'll keep that. I will stay out of spoiler territory there, but yeah, it's every single time where he's like, I'm gonna be a really weird dude, like a 13-year-old trapped in however old Sandler is at this point, his body, and just do weird things. I don't know. I thought Ray Liotta was kind of funny too, just being a curmudgeon. I enjoyed it. The bullies in this movie are so cruel. Like they go overboard just to be so mean. Yeah. I don't know, like maybe I am predisposed to like a Sandler movie. I do like a lot of Sandler movies, even before I fell in love with Uncut Gems. Like I grew up with Sandler movies, and I feel like so many other people did too. But I don't know. There's energy to this movie that I thought was really infectious.
Yeah, and you're right. Some of the bullies are a bit too far. And the movie is kind of it is pure PG-13. Like there are a couple times where it steps a little further than some of his movies usually do.
Yeah, there is the fun gag where I don't know why, because normally I hate this kind of stuff, but June Squibb, Adam Sandler's mom, is wearing all of like the t-shirts, and she doesn't understand like the boner donor t-shirt stuff like that. And it's just like I don't know. I can't really describe. I think it's just because everyone is really trying, where it's like I can get on board for how dumb this is, because it's not just all right, where's my paycheck? You can kind of see like Julie Bowen is like so earnest in this movie. There was a point where I thought like she was going to be the villain of this movie, because she is playing it so earnest and nice and like, oh my God, I love you, Hubie. Where I was like, oh, there's something's going to, like another shoe's going to drop here, right? And no, she's just being really nice.
Hubie.
She really does. It's very, I mean, that's another thing maybe you want to pry at, where it's like Julie Bowen, very attractive woman, going after Hubie. It's like, what is this? You know?
This is also one of the first movies that his kids have played not a massive role, but they were actually in it more than just standing around.
Yeah, Jackie Sandler's in there too. She's been in a few of the Happy Madison movies, where I think she was in The Wrong Missy too, as the mean, like, I guess, rival to David Spade. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many things about this where there was a lot of intentionality and just a lot of thought put into some of these set pieces. It was inventive. There's some cute little things in the script that I really liked, and it goes into that probably not great saccharine territory that a lot of Sandler movies go to, where it's like an hour and a half of like sophomore gags, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's all be nice to each other, or hey, true love is great, right? And that's like all of his movies. But I don't know, like Steve Buscemi just roaming around as a werewolf human hybrid. I don't know. There's so many things in this movie that were so weird and so specific that they just made me laugh and kept my attention. And one of the big things, I feel like I'm bearing the lead here. This is really important. And this movie hints at a greater Adam Sandler extended universe. The ASEU, as I'm now coining it. It's going to be a thing from now on. This is the new stage of Sandler movies. But in the first scene, there's a reference to Hal, the awful orderly in Happy Gilmore, played by Ben Stiller. If you remember from that, just terrorizes his grandma and all the other old people. Or one of his famous lines in that movie is like, "You better go to sleep, or I will put you to sleep." It's like all these awful things to say to old people, and it's really funny. He makes an appearance in this, and it's the same bill, it's the same character. In IMDb, he is credited as Hal, so it's the same person. And then one of the random kids in the town is a new O'Doyle, which, if you remember from Billy Madison, is that awful group, that awful family where they just yell O'Doyle rules, and there's like four, I don't even know how many there are, but all of them, literally their whole lines are O'Doyle rules. So there's another one. So I'm prepared for just another further connectivity in all these Adam Sandler movies. So maybe bring in Big Daddy next time when all the Sprouses come back. As you can have like a Big Daddy 2 and reference Hubie Halloween. And so another question, like, does this mean that Adam Sandler's various characters exist? So like, could Billy Madison and Hubie have a conversation together? These are like the important questions that I have.
I think that you're onto something here. I think there is a real potential there for this Adam Sandler Extended Universe.
I'm ready. If Hubie Halloween wants to spin off into an MCU 20 plus movies, I'm ready. It's so weird. It's so weird that I'd be willing to talk about it for the next 5,000 years or however long it goes.
Oh yeah, we're ready for it. Also just wanted to point out something wild. 14 and a half minutes of credits. Did you notice that at all?
Yeah, because they do all the outtakes, right?
Yeah, you get the outtakes, but like that's a long time.
It's really, because I thought that was too, because I saw the time on it. It was like an hour 43, 45, something like that is what this movie is. And I thought that was like, oh, that's too long. Like Hubie Halloween needs to be 90 minutes. But then the movie's done at like a minute, at like an hour 28 or something like that. And it's like, perfect. And then, if you're
there's some good outtakes too.
Yeah. And it kind of goes to the thing where normally that's another thing that I don't like, the outtakes, because it's like, oh, look at all the fun we had that probably wasn't in the film because the movie wasn't good. But it leaves you on a fake high note as you leave the theater or as you go to something else where you're like, oh, that movie was so much fun. But this movie, I don't know, like you kind of know, like just from all these people being in the public eye, like they actually really are friends. So the reactions they have when they laugh are pretty genuine. They like each other and it seems like they're laughing and really enjoying themselves. So I don't know. I feel like you watch all the different things, the debates and continuing pandemic, and you just kind of need something that, I don't know. I don't like the phrase "turn your brain off" because I just can't turn my brain. I don't think that's a thing in terms of movies. But if you want something that's not super, like you don't have to pay really attention to it or anything like that, like Hubie Halloween, it's kind of weirdly the perfect movie for right now, even if it's obviously not very perfect. But I don't know. I had a lot of fun.
So Tenet attempted to save cinema, and you know what, it tried. But Adam Sandler has saved not just cinema, but our universe.
Adam Sandler is king. He can do whatever he wants. I'm still waiting for the really, really bad movie from Uncut Gems. And maybe it'll be heralded as a disaster piece or something because people are like, LOL, this is hilarious that he made a really bad movie because Hollywood rejected him. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great rundown there of Hubie Halloween. Probably longer than it needed to be, but still not long enough.
Not long enough. Never. Let's devote the rest of this podcast for as long as it goes. So until 2050.
We're gonna have part 2 next week. So we're gonna have Colin on for part 2. You can pitch him your ASEU thoughts, and then we'll see what he thinks.
I'll watch it 5 more times and have many more thoughts coming next week.
Yeah, find all the Easter eggs for me. Make a YouTube video about them, and we'll be set for part 2.
I'll make it the video clip where it's the YouTube guy like hands over head going nuts,
Yeah,
and it's like
yeah,
the
yeah.
27 things you missed in Hubie Halloween, and it'll be
Big
terrible.
red circle on something.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's Hubie Halloween. I can't wait for a few weeks from now when Netflix says this is like the most watched thing, and I would actually believe it. I think this year we saw that bar get set a little higher with Extraction. I think this could easily beat Extraction. This garners more audience, in my opinion.
It's so weird because maybe it isn't weird because I feel like Sandler is one of the last few stars that people turn out for to see the movies, and I think going to Netflix was a really smart move on his part. But even people who see like 2 movies a year, they know who Adam Sandler is, and all of his movies do really, really well on Netflix now. Like even Big Daddy was in the top 10 this week. Everyone knows him. All these movies do really well, and even something like The Do-Over or The Ridiculous Six, those did well for Netflix, even though they were steaming piles of shit, you know. So I don't know. I think Sandler is a really smart businessman. You can say what you want about his movies, and I think a lot of those thoughts are warranted. But his movies, he keeps getting movies made. He keeps getting crazy budgets to do these pretty low rent things. You just like Murder Mystery. That's literally just him on a European vacation, and Netflix gave him $70 million to do that, which is insane. But he keeps getting stuff made, and there's a lot of people you can't say that for who are super talented in the business.
He's the king of Netflix for sure. I think we can agree with that. So yeah, that's our top 10. Few animated movies there. The Croods, kind of, as we said, building up some hype probably for a few months from now with that sequel. So let's move away from that. I know that you have a quick thing you want to talk about, a recent release that you did check out.
Yeah, so I wanted to quick mention Charm City Kings, which dropped on HBO Max this past weekend. I saw it at Sundance, and I put a review up for it on the site. And boneheaded me, pre-pandemic me, saying, I think the log line was, "Hey, Charm City Kings has a chance to be a really big deal once it goes into theaters." And well, that didn't happen. It's on HBO Max. It was supposed to go to Sony Pictures Classic, and I think it was supposed to come out in April, which obviously didn't happen. And then it changed hands at some point. Now it's on HBO Max. But this movie's terrific, and it feels like the next in line in terms of in those movies like Boys in the Hood, or the young people in tough neighborhoods trying to get by and getting seduced by gang members. Or it reminded me a lot of The Hate You Give too, a movie from years ago that I really liked. But it stars, I hope I don't butcher his name, but Jai Diallo Winston, who you've probably seen in Proud Mary, or maybe you haven't because no one saw Proud Mary. But he was in Queen and Slim too. He played a pivotal role in that movie. But he is terrific in this movie. So this movie is about a young boy played by Winston. His name's Mouse, and he is really interested in joining this dirt bike gang in Baltimore. And I think this is based on a true story, and I forgot the name of the documentary this is based on too. But all this is based on true events, where there is a big deal biker gang or dirt bike gang in the Baltimore area, and it's a lot of he doesn't really have any role models, and he sees these dirt bikers with very questionable morals and gang relations as the only people that he looks up to. And then Meek Mill is in this movie. He plays a really interesting role. And I think he's actually terrific in this movie. My Philadelphia roots were just going nuts when there's a dirt bike chase scene and Meekadelphia comes on, and it's just amazing. But he has a really good performance in here. It's a really, really good movie. I think there's, especially for the time we're in right now, I think there's people will find a lot in this. I hope people check it out. It's really, really good. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't know too much about this, but the Meek Mill, that performance kind of interests me. I think I did hear about the casting for this movie when that first got released a while back, but it has a great title, Charm City Kings.
Yeah, it's really good. I feel like Baltimore, one of the best nicknames for a city, Charm City. But yeah, Meek Mill's good in this. It's one of those where you can tell he's probably not the best actor, but he is used very, very effectively in this movie, and his role is very interesting and juicy, and there's a lot to pick at. So I hope people check it out because it is on HBO Max.
Do you think he has a career going forward?
I wouldn't mind it. I think he's good. I think you could use him in other movies, and yeah, he won't have the biggest range, but there's a role for him, and you've seen other rappers kind of go that way as well. I think he's really interesting in this movie.
Yeah, that's good. So check that out. That's HBO Max, as you said. I'm going to talk about a film I watched a couple days ago. It's a Chinese movie, came out in 2018, made by the director Bai Gan. I believe it's one of his first movies. He's a younger director. It came out in 2019 in other markets, but this is a very good film, very humanist film. I watched it on Canopy. You and me talked about that before we got on. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's a pretty good streaming service for foreign films. It's also on the Criterion channel as well, however. And the fact that this movie had a 59-minute take that I didn't notice until kind of getting near the end of the take is pretty impressive. I do want to get into the movie a little. I know you've watched it, so we can talk about it a little bit. Not really the movie itself, but kind of some of the techniques he used, because there's some very interesting use of 3D technology in this film that obviously I didn't get to experience because I watched it at home, and it's been out for years, but it was very interesting. It's a very humanist film, just about a guy who kind of is coming back to his town when he was younger, and he's just trying to uncover some mystery of his life. Very good film, though.
Yeah, it's one of those where people are just generally sad for 2.5 hours. So if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, but in all seriousness, it's a very good movie. That is very, very art housey and definitely not for everybody because it's a lot of people whispering and, like I said, people generally just being sad and not knowing their direction in life and trying to uncover things about themselves. And it's really interesting. Yeah, and this movie has an hour and a half long prologue. It's hilarious. Well, maybe not hilarious, but it's so interesting because you're on this very long, winding, kind of amorphous journey, and then it goes to black, and then it's a long day's journey into night. You're like, whoa, that was the prologue? What? And then yeah, it turns into this 59-minute long take that is so fascinating, and it is so hallucinatory, and it plays. It's like one of the most interesting dreams I feel like that I've seen on film, and like the dream logic where it's like you're suddenly, this person is right next to you, now they're gone, now you're over here, and what is this? What is it? All this spatial awareness. It is so interesting. I loved it. It's one of those where I liked it in the moment. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought, I probably won't ever see that again. But weirdly, I have been thinking about it every so often, and I think that's the intended effect. And I think this movie is really, really interesting if it's the kind of movie for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good. And I actually do want to make a quick note here because it was, I believe it might actually be a Taiwanese film, or maybe a joint production. But I did want to note that. But yeah, it is very good. And there is one thing I do want to point out. I don't know if you noticed this or read about it, but there is a point in the film where 3D kicks in, and you're signaled that 3D kicks in when he puts on his 3D glasses sitting in a theater.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I saw this. This is one of the coolest viewing experiences. I saw this in a downtown theater, and there's literally 25 seats in the theater I saw it in.
Oh, it's neat.
Super intimate, really cool. But yeah, I don't know if I caught that at the time.
Yeah, it's neat. So I read a little bit about the background of the film, and it's just like they have these long take. So it is the 59-minute unbroken long take sequence, and that's supposed to be in 3D. So you have your 3D glasses or whatever, and you don't need them for the entire movie. But when he puts on his, that's the signals to the audience that they put on theirs, and I just found that kind of cool. Also, the movie's really gorgeous too. I was reading here, that's why I knew it was probably a joint production at the Golden Horse Awards, which is a Taiwanese film, kind of their Academy Awards. It won the Best Cinematography Award there, and it is a gorgeous movie to look at. Great color palette as well. But yeah, this is a good film, and 59 minutes unbroken. Like that choreography, that setup, that has to be spot on.
It is so interesting because normally when you have a longer take like that, it is like it's stitched together. Like I've said my piece on 1917, a movie I still don't like, but that you can see all the stitching in that, or it's just people talking in a room. But this is the camera is zooming all over the place, and it goes at one point it's going on a pulley down a zip line. It is if there was like a hidden cut in here, I don't know because it's so well put together and so
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, and I did read that the director, there were 7 total attempts before he was happy with that 59-minute take. But yeah, that's the thing. I really had no clue that this was a thing, this 59-minute take until near the end of it. I'm like, that was long. And then I read that it was 59 minutes. I'm like, oh, it was half the movie. But this was good. This was good for sure. And one thing I also wanted to point to about this movie, is even more so than just to take something a little bit with the background of when it came out. So obviously it's a very art house film, and it got a big release in China, and it made big money on the day of its release. It came out actually on New Year's Eve, and I just find Chinese culture and the way they kind of include cinema into things as very cool, because I could never see this happening in the U.S. or anywhere else for that matter, even in Canada here. But they set up the show times on Christmas Eve so that the movie ended at midnight, because there's like these sparklers and this kind of, like, it looks like it's a midnight sequence, and it was supposed to end right at when things struck 12 in real life for everyone watching. So I find that kind of cool. Cool kind of setup by Chinese cinemas there. But the movie made 28 million on the first day in China, and overall it just made 41 million in China. So it really didn't make much after that. And apparently it got like massively review bombed in China too, by people who just didn't really get it or like it. And I guess they weren't ready to see the capital C cinema.
Yeah, it sounds like this movie was heavily marketed as something it's not.
Hmm.
And if you go into this movie thinking it's maybe not something that's action packed, but it's something that's just like a little more accessible or what you're used to watching, you might hate this movie because, like I said, it's hard to just even describe this plot. It's, I guess, a mystery, but it's really just a more about people searching, like longing for something that you don't really know what it is in the end. But I think it's a really interesting, hypnotic movie in that sense. But yeah, I could see a lot of people watching this and getting lulled to sleep really, really fast because it is very dreamlike the entire time, even before the 59-minute take, and it's just slowly moving through the what it's showing you, and people are whispering, and there's a few scenes with people eating whole apples that were pretty interesting to me. But yeah, this is, when I say it's not a movie for everybody, it really isn't. It's a tough sit if you are not into capital C cinema, but I recommend it. It's for people who do like capital C cinema because there's so much craft in it, and I think it is one that I do want to return to at some point because I think I might have been a little dismissive when I first saw it, but it's very good.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Definitely. I mean, you just kind of think of it. This movie did hit like a massive wide release in China, and it's pretty much just like your small indie movie getting like a Avengers scale release. I don't think it probably was intended to. I don't think audiences intended to go see this type of movie. It probably was something to do with the advertising.
Yeah, it's we see that all the time here too. There's like
Yeah.
I feel like every A24 horror movie, they get some quote out of Sundance where like this is the scariest movie ever, and then someone sees it who sees like again like 2 movies a year, and they're like, this movie was stupid, nothing happened, and you're like, well, that's not the point of it, but yeah, it's definitely one of those instances for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree. So let's move on to just something you watched here before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I want to talk about David Fincher's The Game, which I'd never seen before up until this week, and I mean, David Fincher is one of the best filmmakers working right now, if not the best. And I saw the trailer for Mank, and it got me really excited to see that. And so I dipped into the game, which yeah, I'd never seen before. And it's one of those that I feel people don't really talk about a lot in his filmography. But frankly, I loved it. It's terrific, and I've it's a little more divisive, and you can see why, because so this movie is about Michael Douglas, and probably one of the last good Michael Douglas performances. But he gets a birthday card from his brother, played by Sean Penn, and it says it's for this mysterious company called Consumer Recreation Services, I think is what it's called, CRS, and it's called The Game, and they take all these tests and they can create this simulation. It's a simulation kind of, but they create this game for you, and you don't know exactly what it is until it starts happening. And this is a David Fincher movie, so it turns into serious thriller territory right away. A lot of mystery in here, and it's one of those where if you look at it totally literally, you're like, how is this company doing all these different things to Michael Douglas? This is ridiculous. Like, there's all these crazy shootouts, and they're controlling so many different things, and you're like, all right, these people are like God. Like, how is this happening? You know? But I took this movie a little more figuratively. If you look at this movie kind of as people have talked about it as like Scrooge, where it's Michael Douglas kind of receding back into his mind and kind of looking at his own life and what he's done and what he's failed to do. It's I think it's really interesting in that sense, because you can look at, there's a lot of really good, interesting dream logic that this movie has, where all these things are happening, and if you take it literally, you look at it and you're like, what? Like, this makes no sense. And if you try to like pick apart all of the, like, I guess, plot issues, you would like lose your mind in the first 15, 20 minutes. Like, there's so much that just isn't possible if you take everything as these are actual people doing actual things. But if you look at it as someone taking stock in their life and the horrors that come with that, if you're not so great of a person, I think The Game is really, really cool. So maybe that's a galaxy brain reading of this movie. But I really, really liked it. And it's so well photographed. I mean, it's a David Fincher movie. It's so meticulously put together. It's just the framing, editing is just terrific. There's a shootout scene, which I thought was incredible in this movie. So yeah, if you haven't seen this, I would say check it out. You might hate it. It does seem like it is very divisive among Fincher heads and just people in general, but I found something in it, so maybe you will too.
Is this his second movie after Alien 3?
I think he made 7 before this, I think.
Yeah,
and then
you're right.
This was between 7 and Fight Club.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really good. I liked it a lot. Michael Douglas is terrific in it. Yeah, Sean Penn is really good in it. He's in like a few scenes, but he's on one. He's going nuts. Yeah, there's one shot at the end. There's a slow motion shot, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But I'll leave it as that. But there's a slow motion shot at the end that is so beautiful, and one of my favorite David Fincher feats of filmmaking that he's done. It's so cool looking. Yeah, there's so many things, like even at the end where you're like, hey, like, is this really all possible? No, but I think the movie is very consistent if you look at it not figuratively, or figuratively, I should say. If you look at it as that and not as this is all happening in the real world, it all stays pretty consistent. So I don't know. Keep an open mind. Maybe take some drugs. Maybe that'll help. Open your mind a little bit to it. I think it's really, really interesting, and frankly, one of my favorite Finchers. Maybe not Zodiac or Social Network, maybe not there, but it's up there. I really like it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I mean, you're obviously getting ready for Mank, and that's going to be exciting. December 4th, I believe, is when that is going to hit Netflix after a short release in, I guess, wherever they can find theaters to play it in November. But we are excited for Mank.
Yeah, I feel like that's the next big pod. Maybe we do, since we'll be talking about Hubie for a few weeks at that point, we do Hubie and Mank together. I'm ready.
Yeah, now I'm down. So that's pretty much it for this week's episode of the MovieBabble Podcast. You can always check out our content on our website at moviebabble.com, the Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, shout out the LinkedIn as well. But we've got stuff everywhere. So we'll be back next week, obviously, with a little bit more QB. Hopefully we get to hear Colin's input. But yeah, great having you on, Nick.
Thank you. And we will hear Colin's input. It's going to happen. So I'm ready for it.
Aren't we all? Catch you next week at moviebabble.com.